Today is August the 26th, 2014. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop, and we're with Oklahoma State University. And today we're in Del City, Oklahoma, to speak with Lois Wooten. And this is regarding our Oklahoma 100-Year Life Project. So thank you for having us today.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Let's begin with having you tell us when and where you were born.
Well, I was born in a small town in northeastern Texas, and the name of it is Floyd. It was Floyd, Texas, and my birth was a hard birth for my mother, and people thought that I died, that the baby didn't live, but she did, and so that's where I spent my life until I got married, which was about 25. I was 25 years old. But I attended this school that taught from kindergarten through the 11th grade, all in one school. It was a two-story building, brick building, and I don't know how they managed to do that, but anyway, that's way it was. And I went to that same school, until I went to graduated, and then I wanted to go to teacher's school, commerce college, and because Floyd wasn't. Well, anyway, we didn't have it. It wasn't go through the 12th grade, so we had to go. My friend and I went to a little town about 8 miles west there, Farmersville, and finished up what credits we needed to go to college, and then we had to take a entrance exam for that. So, but getting back to when I was growing up, in this little town, my uncle had a restaurant or cafe or something. Anyway, a man that wrote a book about this called him Bo Nolan's Cafe, and it was noted for the red hot chili. And I had never heard that until I got this book. This is the book that he wrote, and he was born in Floyd too. And lived to be over 100, but he was born in 1910 and was older than me. And his parents dad was the banker, and I have written down here we had a bank, and we had a post office, a dry goods store, a department store, and we had a grocery store and this cafe and a doctor and a drugstore, and it was this railroad track run right through the middle of the town, and we had a depot, and we could ride the train into Greenville or Farmersville, and of course at that time we didn't have a car, we had buggies, horse and buggy, and I had the lady that did the telephone switchboard. We never had a telephone at home, and we didn't have running water and no electricity. We used lamps, and when you had to take a bath, you had a big old wash tub, and we didn't have a door between the kitchen and the dining room. You'd hang a sheet or something over there so you'd have a little privacy, and then you had to heat the water on top of the stove till it, was right. So that's the way we bathed, and the water we had was a well just outside the kitchen porch, and we didn't, of course, not having electricity. We had an ice box, we called it. Of course, kids nowadays don't even know what you're talking about. But you put the ice in the top, and then that kept the food cold. But it always had a tray in the bottom, and if you didn't watch it, it'd run over and spill water all over things as it melted. So that's the way. And sometimes I remember we would put, like if we run out of ice or something, we'd put like butter and some milk in a bucket and put it down in the well where it was cold. And that's how we kept it, from souring. And my mother was a good cook, and she always had a big garden, and they always would have like a half a beef, and then she would cut that all up in different things and can it. So we always had plenty to eat, and as far as money, we didn't have much of that, but we managed. And we had some land just back of our house, about 10 or 11 acres. That it wasn't ours, but if you've heard of sharecroppers, that's what we did. We worked on the halves. We did the work, and the man that owned it, whatever we harvested, he got half of it. So that's the way we made our living, and then working in the fields, like for cotton, chopping the cotton in the early, spring, and then picking the cotton in the later. And my mother told me she used to pick cotton. You had to have a big, long sack with a strap around here, and you pulled it, and you picked the cotton, put it in there, and she would take me, and I'd ride on that cotton sack while she picked cotton. So, let's see.
Were you an only child?
Yes, until I was 12 years old. Then my mother had I had a sister, and that was a joy to all of us, And then I had a cousin that, Linda, would you get me some water?
Sure.
Her parents passed away, and she was my father's sister, and so we took her. She was 1 year older than me. She was always real tiny. She was, I guess, a preemie maybe, when she was born, but she was always small. But she lived with us, and she was like another sister, to us. Thank you. I get dry.
So your father was a farmer or a banker?
Well, he did farming, and then in the fall when they had the cotton ginning, we had I don't know whether you know what a cotton gin is, maybe.
A little.
Anyway, he worked at that, and that was a very noisy, dusty place, because I used to go down and watch him sometimes, and it was fascinating, because you put the cotton in there with a bowl hull on it, and it was just roll and roll until it separated all that, and then the cotton came out and was put in a bale. Linda, would you go get that little bale of cotton on the shelves in there? I showed it to you.
Yeah.
It's a tiny one, but it's exactly like they used to make. And we would, if we had cotton, and you waited until the price was better before you sold it. And sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 bales, only it would be about 6 foot tall, and I don't know how wide, but anyway, we would maybe have 2 or 3 of those. We would play and jump from one to the other. It's a wonder we didn't fall and break our neck. But anyway, that was the way we had, my husband had to get this.
Do they tie it in burlap usually?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly the way they did it. And I don't know whether they still do that or not.
Would you have to help pick when you got older?
Oh, yes, I worked and did everything they did. And sometimes we wouldn't even start school until some of the cotton was harvested, because it was at that time. And they'd wait like a month or so before they started school, so the kids could work in the fields. So I remember one time we made I don't know how we did it, but we had a little more money than usual, and my dad bought a new Ford. It was a sedan and black, and we thought we were just about rich when we had that. But you know, all good things come to an end, and we couldn't make the payment, so they had to come and repossess it. So that was kind of tough on us, but we made it anyway. So, and then when I learned to drive, we did finally get a car, and I learned to drive when I was about 12, because in Texas, you know, that was before licensing and all that kind of stuff. So I did that, and in school I was. Linda says I brag about it, but
I didn't say that.
no, I was promoted up instead of promoted back. I was promoted up because it was boring, and you know, the class I was in. It must have been when I was about the 4th grade, I
I
guess.
think you said 3rd grade.
3rd or 4th.
And yours.
Anyway, that made me younger than the kids, you know, that I graduated with. What did I
It's
do
right in
with
front
that?
of you.
This was my graduating class. There's 10 of us, 5 girls and 5 boys.
What was the name of the school?
Floyd
Just,
High School, or Floyd School.
and what was the name of the elementary, the 1 through 11th?
It was
Oh, just plain-
the same, that was the same,
Just
the only school we had. You went from kindergarten to 11 in the same building.
And it was just called
Same
Floyd.
one, yeah. So, anyway, the boy that Willard Ellis and I, we tied for valedictorian, and he came out about 1 point ahead of me, so that knocked me out of the hat. So I got to be the class poet, but I don't remember what I wrote. But I was recognized with something, and so that's what they called. I was the poet. And I remember when we had our senior play, I had to play the part of an elderly Jewish lady, and had to learn to speak like they did, you know. And something else we did to help raise money in the school, we'd have box suppers, and we'd, like, you could take a shoe box and decorate it with just any way you wanted to, you know, make it as pretty as you could, and then you fill that with food, fried chicken, or whatever you wanted to fix. And then the men would bid. They didn't know who these boxes belonged to, but they would bid on them, and then whoever got the box, you shared the food with them, you know. So that's what we did to make money for the school, to do some things, you know. And I played baseball, and I played basketball, and the basketball uniforms was black bloomers that had to come below our knees. Had elastic in there, and so it was quite a show to see us playing basketball like that.
I'd like to see that.
And then at the end of the school, they always had a big picnic, or you know, dinner on the ground, things like that. And we had 3 churches in this little town. We had a Methodist and a Baptist and Church of Christ, and but they didn't. The Baptist and Methodist they would alternate, you know, between the Sundays, so they wouldn't all meet on the same day. So we were going to the Methodist church, but later I was saved and became a Baptist after I married. But anyway, that we always the church. I don't know whether y'all are Church of Christ or not, but they always wanted to debate the Bible. You know, that was their thing. They always wanted to debate with the Baptists and the Methodists because they believed a little different, you know, from us. But I remember that. And well, did you ever hear of Audie Murphy? He was he was born just a little bit north of where I lived. And they moved, they were very poor. There was a big family of them, and their dad went off and left them one time, and they moved into Floyd in somebody's garage. I remember that real well, and he was just a kid. And him and my sister went to school together. So we had a little something to be proud of there from what he turned out to be, you know. Of course, you know, he made a movie star, and then he was killed in a plane wreck. And and then there was another well-known, you would probably never heard of him, but he was a pitcher for the White Sox, and he was from around there, and his name was Monty Stratton, and my cousin married his cousin, and he had an accident. He liked to hunt, and he was hunting with his gun and put it down, and it went off and shot him in the leg, and he lost a leg, and of course he couldn't ever play ball again. But those were just some of the things that happened, you know. So
And
what else?
and you mentioned you played baseball, softball.
No, it wasn't softball. No, it was real baseball.
Baseball.
Yeah, I've got that finger to show for it. No, it isn't. I caught it one time, and you know, that was it. You didn't go to the doctor for everything, but we did have a doctor there in the town. And I remember we didn't have any lawnmowers or anything. We had to cut the grass with hose. And this cousin of mine, Marie was her name, that lived with us, we were out cutting the grass, and I swung the hoe and hit her on the ankle, and it split it like a big gash in there. Well, they had to rush her take her to the doctor. It was his office where they had to take her, and it looked like that a piece of the flesh was gone, and I was out there looking for it. But it was had just come open, you know. But anyway, she didn't know, of course, anything about it, and they were sewing it up, and they used a needle that was bent. And she told the doctor, she said, "Oh, you bent the needle, didn't you?" So, well, something else. Somebody asked me something.
How would you get to school? In the first
Well,
grade?
I practically lived on the school ground.
Okay.
So that was something else, because we didn't have any kind of cafeteria or anything in the school then, you know. So you had to take your lunch. And a lot of the boys rode horses to school. And I remember one old boy that I didn't like him because he would ride like he was going to run over me with that horse. And I remember one time he was chasing me, and I run and got inside of a fence, you know, a gate that in somebody's yard. And I never did like that guy anymore. He was.
Well, you wanted a horse.
Yeah, I used to want a horse so bad, and they had said, this was when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. They said, if you see a shooting star and you say something, you know, you'll get it, your wish will come true. So I used to say, horse and saddle, real fast. Well, I got the horse, but I never did get the saddle. My dad traded for a pinto horse, and we had a lot of fun with him, except if you got too many kids, 2 or 3 kids get on him, and if one happened to kick him in the flank, he'd buck you off. But I was always up at the front holding on, you know, so I didn't get bucked off, but some of the kids did. And then another family.
What was his name?
The horses.
The horse, I don't remember what we named him. He just Pinto, I think, because he was white and brown, you know, different colors on him. Then these neighbors, they had a solid white horse that was a beautiful horse and gentle, and he just let us get up and just slide around on him, you know, and ride him. And so one time I remember we were going to have a parade with that horse, and we decorated him, you know, and decorated ourselves, and then just went up and down the road. There was no streets, it was just road, and that was something else. the town that we traded in was Greenville, Texas. You may have heard of that. It's still there, and it's about 50-something miles northeast of Dallas. They had a sign that was hung. I wanted to show you that picture. It was hung as you came into the city, the main street. This sign was hung up above it, and it says, "The blackest land and the whitest people from Greenville welcome." And see, when the segregation came out, they made them take that down because it sounded racist. That wasn't what they meant at all. It had nothing to do with the race, because it was a big strip of black land. I mean, it was like, if it rained, it was just like glue. If you got stuck in that, you didn't get out very easily. And that was what the blackest land was. And of course, the whitest people meant they were good, and I guess maybe that they could see something wrong with that, but anyway, they made them take it down. And I've got a picture of that somewhere. I couldn't find it the other day, but it showed it in there. So.
And tell him when you first got a indoor bathroom. How long were you?
We didn't have that until I got married.
Running water?
No running water, nothing. And we did finally, for a long time we didn't have electricity, but then we finally got that. And that just consisted of a little long wire hanging down with one bulb in it, but that was better than a lamp that we had to carry around.
How did that change life?
Well,
electricity and water?
That helped a lot then, because we could get electric iron. We used to heat our iron things. We used to heat it on the stove, and we had to have like 2 irons. You'd keep one on the stove, and then you'd iron, and then you'd change it. The other one would be hot, And of course, not having any electricity, and in the winter, we had a little stove. It wasn't much bigger than this, and it had 2 round things like burners that you could take the cap off, and you could put a pot on there and cook beans or something. And that was how we heated our front room that we had. And that was also our bedroom. We didn't have a separate one. And at night, when it was cold, it would really be cold in the other rooms. And my mother used to heat a brick, and wrap it up and put it in the bed with us to keep us from freezing. But we had lots of cover too, so.
Did she quilt, your mother?
Oh, quilt, don't talk about that. We kept a quilt going all the time, just about. And it was hung from the ceiling, and you could have these wooden things that you put it on, fasten it down, and then you had to sit and you'd sew. And I had more pricked fingers from that sewing. I never did like to quilt, but yes, we did do a lot of quilting. And my mother was a very good seamstress, and I never felt, like I didn't have things the other kids, because she was such a good seamstress. I always had good clothes, and and she was very talented in other things too. She did a lot of other things, and she was kind of a progressive person too, because she was the first woman in Floyd to get her hair cut. And that wasn't, if she hadn't been married, that would have been terrible. But my sister still has her hair. My niece, her daughter has it, but we kept her hair, and it was long, quite a bit of hair that they cut her. And then, of course, after she got hers cut, everybody else started getting theirs cut. But she started it. And I remember she used to make me, for Christmas, she'd make one time she made me like a little dresser and put a mirror on it for my dolls, And then we had a big old, kind of like a cedar chest. And one day I was fooling around in there to see what was in it, and I found a doll that she had put away for Christmas, and I got it ahead of time. I wasn't supposed to be looking for that, but and then she would make I don't know what they call this, but you'd make soap newspapers in water, and it made it like a mush or something, and then you could shape that around a glass or pitcher, and after it dried, then you could paint it, and it didn't look like what you thought it was, you know, but it was beautiful work that they could do that with. I don't know what they called it, but she was good at that too. And she was a good cook, and everybody wanted to come to Aunt Nora's. Her name was Nora, and her picture's right up there. A picture of her that she sent to friends and relatives in Alabama, and one of them saved that postcard and gave it to me when we had a reunion recently. Well, anyway, I went ahead. I didn't get to go to college very long because the times it was in 1931 was when I graduated, and so that was bad times, and didn't have the money to go, and because my mother, when I graduated, she didn't even have the money to buy my graduation ring, and she borrowed it from her sister. I think it cost $8. Now I think they cost hundreds, but I still have it. And so then, after I didn't go to college, I went to Dallas to a beauty school over there. I was going to take a beauty course and, get to be a beautician. Well, I stayed with a lady that was a school teacher because I could do a little housework and cooking for my board. Didn't have to do that, And but I always had to ride a streetcar going there, and it was you'd have to change from one to the other because the one didn't go directly there. And so we had some friends that had lived in Floyd, and they moved to Dallas, but I had lost track of them a long time. And one morning as I was going to the school, this young man got on about my age, and he cleared his throat like kind of cough, and I thought, that sounds like this friend of mine. And I went back. He went back and sat down, and I went back and I said, "Are you Klein Harris?" And it was. And so I got to visit with him while I was in Dallas. And I also got to meet my cousins, my youngest uncle, Charlie Nolan. He and his wife separated, and she moved to Dallas, and she had two girls about near my age. And so I had lost track with them. And then when I went to that school over there, I looked them up, and I have pictures of them now that I didn't, would never had before. But another story, I got so homesick. When they'd come over, I'd cry all the time they was there. So I finally quit and didn't finish that. So then, after that, well, there wasn't much to do in Floyd, but I guess you've heard of the Hager Manufacturing Pants Factory. They put in a factory in Greenville. Well, of course, all the young ladies and everybody went to put their application in. And my cousin, Marie, she was working, keeping house for some people, and she had a telephone. We never had a telephone either. That was something else. But she called and said that we gave her phone number. And so when we went, I was the only one that had a car that I could take them in. So I took all the others that had applied. And when I got there, they didn't have my name on there. They had got the others, but they didn't get mine. But anyway, I didn't like that, so I told them so and explained things to them. So then they let me work too. And that's where I met the love of my life, her dad. Is this all right?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Well,
So you didn't like making quilts, but you didn't mind sewing pants?
no, I did the buttonholes.
Oh, okay.
And my husband was about as far as from here to her, and he was pressing the top of the pants with a presser. And so, of course, we ironed one another up, and I'd always smile at him. And I guess you call that flirting, I don't know. But anyway, for a break, we'd go outside and at this filling station Mr. Cheek was the name of the guy that owned it. And we'd get candy, stand around and talk and stuff like that. And he'd buy me a drink. And first thing you know, we were dating. And so then we got married in August the 19th, 1939. And we lived on Church Street in an apartment. Well, it was just in a home. This widow, her husband was a Baptist preacher, and he had passed away, and she was renting out half of her house, which was a living room, bedroom, and kitchen and bath. So we got that, and it was $10 a month. But we didn't have a car because the car that we had, I had bought that, so I left it with my parents. They needed a car. So we had to walk to work for a long time there. And then we found an apartment over closer to work for $8. And they're the same people. I mean, it was Mrs. Wright and then Mr. Wright, but they weren't related. But that's where we lived, and so that's when we we were going to buy a car. Well, we didn't have the money for the down payment, so the guy let us leave it on there on the lot until we got enough money for the down payment. And I remember that my uncle died, my dad's older brother, Uncle Dan, and they let us have that car to go to the funeral, but we had to take it back and put it on the lot till we got enough money for the payment. And we even kept that, and that's why we came to Oklahoma in, but then we finally traded it off. But then we
Tell about the twins.
yeah, we had been trying to have a child, and we wasn't working, so we went to this Dr. Phillips was his name, and he gave me some fertility pills or whatever, and so I got pregnant with twins and twin boys, but before they were born, I was having trouble, so they put me to bed, and my mother came to see us, to help me, and I looked up at a picture one day, and I said I could see like double, and so she called the doctor, and he said, get her, me in quickly, because that wasn't a good sign. But anyway, they went full term, and then when they were born, but they were stillborn. So that was a tragedy to us, but she came along about 3 years later, and what a blessing she's been. So then when she was 2 months old, I forgot to tell this. This was when I was pregnant with her. My grandmother passed away, and my grandfather was having trouble just living by himself, and he just lived right across the road from my mother. So she suggested that we come out and live with him and, cook for him and all. So we did. And I remember one day, Ernest came in about the middle of the afternoon, and I said, well, what are you here now? He said, well, I quit my job. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a terrible time to quit your job. He said, but I got a better one. And it was in the war, during the war, in 41. And they had put a air training field in Greenville where they trained the pilots, and so he got a job as a firefighter. And his sister, Ethel, she's the one that told him about putting his application in, and so he did. And so then we moved back to Greenville with some couple of old people named what was her name? Anyway, it was on Jones Street, and that's where it was when she was born. And it wasn't in a hospital. It was an old house. It had just been made into a hospital. And I remember and it was funny because they didn't have any kind of gurneys or anything, so they had to call the funeral home to come and move you, like from the birth where she was born, to a room. Only it was a big old room and people were just lying around it, it wasn't like a hospital room. But anyway, this guy that came to move me, I had gone to school with him, and his name was Coker. And I said, Jim, I've got the prettiest little brown-eyed baby girl. I don't know how I knew she had brown eyes, but I guess, when babies are little, they say you can't much tell. But anyway, she was such a blessing. She's been such a blessing to us all. But anyway, then when she was 2 months old, it was transferred to Fort Worth. And it was 4th Army Air Force Airfield. And we stayed there until she was 2. And she was, she said, she wrote a letter to her daddy. I wrote it and let her
Well,
look
he
at
came
it.
up here, tell me.
Yeah, well, we transferred to, they were gonna close down the field at Fort Worth. So they could transfer up here, this airfield. And, but they were the people that, at that time, if you had seniority, you could go to another place, and if someone didn't have that much, it bumped them out, they called it. Well, that's what happened up here at Tinkerfield. And so when these guys from Fort Worth came, they didn't like that at all. They were just really mean to them. In fact, he just almost quit, but he hung in there, and before he retired, he had some of his best friends, there. But anyway, when she was, he was staying at a boarding house with an old lady. Several of the firefighters were, and so I wrote him, I printed a letter off, like I wanted her, and she copied it. And when she was about 2, and she copied that. I said, well, I've got proof of, because I still have it. And, because she said in there, I miss you, Daddy, and stuff like that. And anyway, that's, and then when we moved up here, we had to stay there was Odom's Court that, out on Highway 77. It's all gone now, but it was anyway,
Like
we
an
had
old motel thing.
Yeah, a motel. They still have. I noticed the other day they had one of the Odom the Third.
Really?
Yeah, was in some kind of real estate, So, but anyway, we stayed there, and we had a little hot plate that I would cook when he would come home from. They got off early in the morning, and come home for breakfast. That was changing when they were changing, and this other couple was living in one of the rooms too. But they were teasing me because I would cook bacon and eggs, and they said, they can smell that when you're cooking. that I wasn't supposed to be doing that, But anyway, we stayed there for a while and thought we never would find a place, but one of the firefighters had they lived in a duplex, and one of them was vacant, and I practically begged him, to rent it to us, and so he did, and so we lived there. It was over in Capitol Hill, and we lived there until she was 5, and then we moved to Del City and bought a house, and it was on a corner lot that was shaped like this, a big lot, and didn't have any, of course, grass or anything, on it, and we had a telephone booth in the corner of the yard because they didn't have any telephones out here.
It was hilarious.
But anyway, we lived there, and we had to put in a fence, and my husband liked to work in the yard, and so he planted red roses, and that was just a kind of a showcase, because it was up kind of like on a little hill, and he had all those pretty roses and all around there, and so, but then he had a heart attack in 1965, and so he had to kind of slow down and couldn't do much work in the yard, so that's when we moved over here, and that's the year that she got married. She went to
We got married.
she went to OBU, and my husband had said, well, when she gets married, I'm having a talk with her husband. Well, when she met him, he was good looking, tall, handsome, short hair, My husband didn't go for this long hair at all, so.
He didn't
Anyway.
want any facial hair either.
Yeah,
No mustache.
no mustache or anything like that. He just, but anyway, he said, and it was funny because they had a blind date with a friend of hers that got her a blind date with Eldon, and we were up in her room getting stuff put in there and we looked out the window, and they were walking across. And now he says, "Now that's the kind of guy I want her to marry." So, and that was something else I forgot. He told me after we married that when before we married, he said, if I get married, that's gonna be her. So he thought he was pretty sure of himself. Anyway, then came our grandkids, and I was working at the school. I guess I better go
You
back.
left out your work life.
Yeah, you
I
might.
got to back up a little bit here because, when we got this new, we went home, we spent a lot of time going back and forth to Texas, Well, we had this car, it was a Chevrolet, kept getting out of gear, and, as you drove along, so coming back, we stopped at Denison, Texas, and just to look at some new cars, and wound up by just trading that car and getting us a brand new Ford, except it didn't have an air conditioner or a heater. And I got a job at Woolworth in Capitol Hill, and it was so cold that winter, and so my husband sold his shotgun, which he loved, to put a heater in there for me. So anyway, that's when we moved out here, and I started working at TGNY. That's where Gregory's is now in Del City. And the first thing I was doing, they put me making Easter baskets, decorating them, fixing them up. So I worked there a while, and then a friend of mine, they opened up the high school, and she was going to be the cafeteria manager. So she hired me to help her. And we worked 1 year together, and she got pregnant and had to quit, and so then I had to be the manager, and I was there until they built a junior high school, Kerr Junior High, and so I went there as cafeteria manager and worked there for 25 years, and that's where I retired from.
Boy,
And
the food changed a lot in that time period, didn't it?
If what?
The food, cafeteria food changed a lot.
We did
during
everything
that.
from scratch. We made the most delicious food, and still the kids, it was cafeteria food, they thought, but they didn't have nothing. If they knew what they were having now, they would be glad that we still had what we did. We make cinnamon rolls from scratch, you know, and we had pans about this long, about this wide, and I had the best cook. She would make pie crust fitted in those old big pans. And we would make cream pies like coconut pie, pumpkin pie, and stuff like that. And the cinnamon rolls were our specialty too, you know. And then we'd have, for that Thanksgiving and all, we would have, make turkey, you know, the government would furnish the turkeys cornbread dressing. And had a big panel that looked like a row, what you row a boat with, that's what you stirred it with. And but it was good, wasn't it?
Yes, it was good. They sold
And she was
extra cinnamon rolls. Kids would line up to buy those things.
yeah, and she was in the band. She played in the band, and that's another story.
Well, back to the cafeteria, could you all decide what you were going to serve that day, or was it planned
We had
ahead?
a manager that a lady that helped us with our. Well, at first we didn't have that. We just had to do it on our own. You figure out what we were going to have. But then they hired a supervisor, and she made out the menus, and you know, and helped us a lot with that. And we fed at one time about 1,000 kids a day, and then of course it whittled down later. But it was a lot of hard work, but it was rewarding, you know, too.
Make homemade rolls?
Yeah, oh yeah, the homemade rolls, had those big old mixers. And I remember one year when, at the end of school, that my principal he was so good, that's the reason I went to Curve with him instead of staying at the high school, because he's real good to me, and his wife was teacher, she taught home ec, we called it. And they were both real nice people, good to us. He treated me like a teacher instead of a cook, you know. So, but anyway, one year at the end of school, of course everybody's wanting to get out, you know, so we were just going to have sandwiches. Well, we ran out of sandwiches, and here he comes, he went off and bought these little cans, tuna fish. I don't know how many he had, but he knew I didn't like that because how in the world was you going to mix that in that big old mixer? But anyway, I had to do it. But later he came in and he said, should I throw my hat in first? So he was very, very good to work for.
And so when did you retire from that?
I retired in 1976. And that's when I got to have my dream come true. I started taking art lessons for 6 years, oil paintings, and that was one of my things I had. On my bucket list was to be an artist, and because I used to just love to draw and do things like that. So that's and then after that, my mother got where she couldn't live by herself, and my husband retired, and then he went to work for Capital Abstract Company and worked down there for about 18 years, being a messenger, just delivering things, and loved that kind of work. And of course, after his heart attack, that was good. The walking, he needed that. So, but anyway, then after she passed away, we had some friends that worked for tour bus company, and so we started traveling, and we got to go all to places we'd never dreamed that we'd ever get to go to. Like Niagara Falls and the Washington and California, just
Hawaii.
all over the place.
Hawaii.
So moving to Oklahoma wasn't a bad thing.
No, it turned out it was really good. I said, if I look back, I can just see how the Lord led us all the way. Things just fell in place.
You gotta tell the one funny story about Hawaii and the money. the
Oh.
money you had, and where you had it, and how?
Well, my mother used to be our banker at home. She carried a little thing she'd sewed up, a little, and she carried her money down here. And so when we went to Hawaii, we had to take a lot of cash, and so I would, just put it wherever I could. Well, we went to the beach, and not used to being in the water around anything like that. Those waves, when they come in, they just they just knock you down if you don't watch out. Well, that's what happened. They came and just went all over me. And so when I went back to the hotel, that's the reason she wanted me to tell this. I had $50 bills scattered all around, trying to dry them out.
She's having stuffed here and there. They all got wet.
But anyway, we had a wonderful life. And
now your grandchildren.
oh yes, my grandchildren. That's in 1937.
67.
67. She had a baby girl, and Shelley Renee, and they lived in. After they married, they lived in Enid for a while, and then he had a job with the oil company, and they moved to Texas, Levelland, Texas. Only where he worked was called Sundown, Texas, which was not much to it. But they lived in Levelland, and so we kept the road hot, going back and forth to Levelland, and especially after the baby was born. And then 3 years later, she had Jennifer, another little girl, and so of course we was proud of them. And as they grew up, sometimes you do things and then you forget about it, And I know when the youngest one, she wanted to be a therapist, physical therapist, and I paid her tuition to do that, and I just kind of forgot about it. And now she has a real good job. It's with hospice, and she told me one time that if I hadn't done, she reminded me that I helped her do that, and then she said how many, she didn't know how many car tags that I had paid for. We paid for,
You used to do that for both the girls.
Yeah, every time they'd get a car, we'd buy the tag for them, and sometimes it was pretty expensive, back then. Compared to what it is now, it's out of reach. But anyway, I'm still enjoying them. They both have good jobs. They're smart, and they got beautiful homes, and
Yeah, you
just
got great grandsons.
oh yeah, that's the love of my life.
You said you were the class poet. Did you ever memorize any poetry?
Yes. When Grandma cleans the attic room, my mother had taught me this. It was never written down until several years ago that I decided I better write it down because, nobody would ever know it. And I don't know where she got it, but I memorized it and I still know it. I may try to say it for you, but probably now I can't do it.
Well, let's try.
Am I too long?
No, you're doing good.
Well, this is about a little girl that she was helping her grandma, and it's called When Grandma Cleans the Attic Room. About the 1st of spring, she opens up every box and shakes out everything. She sweeps the rafters and the floor and makes the windows shine, and Grandma says, I help because I hold the dustpan fine. And then she opens up her keepsake box so I can peep inside. Inside the bonnet that she wore when she was a happy bride. Grandpa's vests and fans and things, and letters tied with blue, and the very first gown she made for my Aunt Lou. And then there's this little pair of red top boots, just hardly worn at all, just scuffed a little around the toe, and awfully cute and small. And then she sits in that old squeaky chair, the one she loves the best, 'cause it's the one she rocked all her babies in the rest. And then when she holds these little boots and kisses them, then I know. That's the little boy that died almost 40 years ago. All of her other children have all grown up and caused her no regret. But oh, that little boy that died, he's her baby yet.
Oh my goodness.
She said my uncle just cried when he said, when I recited that to him.
That's quite good if you were just 5, too, to remember all of that.
I know, and it was never written down. That's something else.
That is.
And you still remember it. That's
I know,
impressive.
it's just like it's burned into my brain. But, you know, because a lot of other things I don't remember. I may not remember what yesterday was.
It was.
Okay.
So one uncle went to World War I.
Oh, I had, let's see, I had
First sheet of it.
Uncle Dick,
Yes.
Uncle Gus,
She wrote it.
my Uncle Ang, and my, I had about 4 uncles that were in that war. And my Uncle Gus was the older one, and he was wounded. I think he got the Purple Heart. And his son, which is my cousin, he's still, we still correspond. They live in Texas, but, and there was something else. When I was working got the job at the pants factory, he was about 9 years old or less, and I was talking about they just had fans around. It was kind of hot in there, you know. And I was talking about, and he spoke up. He says, "But it's in the shade, ain't it?" So that's been one of our sayings. You know, if something's not going wrong, well, it's in the shade, ain't it? Because he had to work in the field where it was hot.
You got to tell your great-grandson's names and everything, so.
Oh, yeah. Her grandsons, my great-grandsons. Where's my purse? I've got a little picture here of them. Now, they're like that. I have to look up to them. But Calvin and Josh. Calvin is the older one with the glasses. Josh just has entered OU, and just, he really loves it. And so the other one, he's gone to Summit Oscar Rose, hasn't he?
Mhm.
But right
Yeah.
now he's working
OSU Tech here.
yeah,
in
and
the
OS2
city.
Tech, but he's working for UPS.
UPS. Yeah, he's
UPS.
a nighttime supervisor.
Yeah, and they're not married. They don't even have girlfriends. I think they, I think Josh is kind of shy, you know, and he's kind of hadn't met many girls. But when he was little, he was so cute. So the little girls, you know, kind of noticed him. And I said one day, well, does Calvin have a girlfriend? He said, no, he can't get one. This is a story I used to tell my granddaughters. They'd come and I'd tell it, and then they'd want me to tell it again. It's this old lady. Now, you know it was a long time ago because it said, the story was that this old lady found a dime. And so she just thought, what can I do with it? I'm going to town and buy me a pig. So she went to town, she got a pig, she started home, and she came to a fence. And she couldn't get the pig to jump over the fence. So she found a stick, and she said, stick, beat pig, pig won't jump over the fence, and I can't get home tonight. But the stick wouldn't do it. So she found some fire, and she said, fire, burn stick, stick won't beat dog, dog won't bite pig, pig won't jump over the fence.
You left
And-
it at the dog.
Huh?
Left out the dog.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Anyway, dog wouldn't bite pig, pig wouldn't jump over the fence. So, that was, what was that, the fire, the water.
Yeah.
She wanted the water to put out the fire, but the water wouldn't do it, so the water wouldn't do it, the fire wouldn't put out the, water wouldn't put out the fire won't burn stick, stick won't beat dog, dog won't bite pig, and I won't get home tonight. So then she saw a butcher, and she said, saw an ox, And she said, ox, drink water. Water won't burn fire. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't jump over the fence. And I can't get home tonight. And but he wouldn't do it. And she got a rope, and she said, rope, hang butcher. Butcher won't kill ox. Ox won't drink water. Water won't put out the fire. Fire won't run stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. And I won't get home tonight. But then she saw that the rope wouldn't do it. But then she got a little mouse, and she said, asked him, he said, you give me some cheese and I will. So he began to chew the rope. The rope began to hang the butcher. The butcher began to kill the ox. Ox began to drink the water. The water began to put out the fire. The fire began to burn the stick. Stick began to beat the dog, and the pig jumped over the fence, and she got home that night.
Kids
Did
love
you
that.
ever hear anything like
I
that?
haven't heard anything like that ever.
I don't think so. Well, that was something I learned years ago, and I still haven't forgot it.
Did you use that as a nighttime story for the
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
grandkids?
yeah. That and making them milkshakes. And, they're both thin. They're not fat. But if they put on a pound, they blame Grandma with it because I made them milkshakes when they came.
Well, how do you keep up with these grandchildren and great-grandchildren today? Do you talk to them or converse with them?
We get together. We don't get together too much now that they're, the way they're working in school stuff. But we get to work. Now, his birthday's coming up. We'll probably all get together at some restaurant or something because the older granddaughter and them, they've just bought a new home and they're packing up. They've sold the other one and they're getting ready to.
Yeah, but he's talking.
Linda, go in there and look. I've got the picture laying in there that I
Okay,
enlarged.
he's
Do
talking
you-
about your.
Do you communicate
He's
with
talking
them?
about your.
Oh.
How you communicate.
Yeah, how you
What he's
communicate.
getting
Oh,
at.
well, no, I don't get to do this with them because, I do with my daughter. And,
Yeah, but you text to everybody. He wants to know about that.
oh, is that
I was
what-
wondering if the grandkids or great-grandkids, if they're texting you and you're
Oh,
texting back.
well,
you
I
know,
don't get to do them, but I do my other family because, they're at work and I don't know, I really don't know their phone number or anything right now. I don't have that, but I text my niece and I text her and anybody that's got where I can. I love to text.
Now,
because
what about your email?
Did you find that picture?
No.
Well, it's
They don't need to see.
oh, okay.
You're,
How did you learn how to do that?
Texting.
Uh-huh.
Well, nothing to it. Just- I don't see anything, and I do shorthand on there. I say LUVU. I don't spell it all out because.
Tell her how many email friends you've had before. We talked about that with Alex, but I mean,
Oh,
you've got so many people that.
well, they've kind of dropped off some because one guy that used to send me about half a dozen a day. Whoever was sending him quit sending him to him, so I don't have as many on there now as I used to. But,
How long have you had your computer?
well, I got the first one when I was 90, and I wore it out or whatever. And so I got me a new one, and then my niece, where's my iPad?
It's in front of you.
Here it is. She insisted that I get an iPad. So I did. And I love to play games. This way I can sit and play games and I can also, check on that and do a lot of things with that.
You also read your Bible on there, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love that because it's so easy to find right quick, and I keep my Bible here, but I usually read it out of this.
And who taught you how to use those things, though?
Oh well, my niece my niece's daughter, she's a whiz on this stuff. If you get something wrong with it, she's about got me ready to where I can fix it though. If something goes wrong in there, I'll just keep messing with it some way, and first thing you know, it's okay. So I don't know how. Sometimes I don't know how to do it, but it works. And but if I get really stumped, she'll come over and help me. And my oldest granddaughter, she has helped me too. She's good at that. So.
What do you think? The technology. What has been the greatest invention you think that you've seen in your lifetime?
Oh, I think stuff like this. My goodness, you can get on that computer and find anything, and how we used to have these. In fact, we've got a whole bunch of encyclopedia books in there that we used to use, to look up stuff. Now, with just one little quirk on there, and you got it. I was going to show you what this new stuff was that I was learning. I'm going to learn, I hope.
And what do you do today for a hobby and
Well, we're crypto quotes. You know what a crypto quote is?
No,
Tanya,
I've heard of them, but I've never.
Well, this is a crypto quote.
Oh yeah.
And I run these off on the computer because I don't get but one in the paper. And that's too easy. I gotta have something a little more. This is what I'm ordered. It's called Zentangle, and it's a form of art. And I got on the internet with that, and it's amazing what you can do with that. And anyways, it's so new and different. So I just anxious to see what it's all about. So do something different.
And do you still paint?
Yes, I paint cards every once in a while. Linda, would you go get some of them in there? Bring them in here.
She's,
Most.
my youngest daughter works for, let's see,
Hospice.
let her explain it.
Well, she
Hospice.
she wanted me to make some cards for them to use, like birthday cards and things, that she could use in this job she has. And so I made a bunch of them, and she put on the back a little sticker that she put on there, and she said, "This is made by my 100-year-old grandmother, and I hope you enjoy it as much as she enjoyed doing it." And I thought that's very sweet of her to put that on the back of those cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long would it take you to do that?
Well,
That one's very
probably an hour or two, That's done with watercolors. And some of these now, I'm just running them off the cards, making copies. I said, after all, there was only one Mona Lisa.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. in my life.
You're steady enough to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
you're.
man.
Strokes. What's a typical day like for you today at 100? What time do you usually get up out of bed? And how do you start your day?
Well, if it's something I have to get up for, I get up pretty early. Otherwise, I may be asleep at 12 o'clock at noon because I don't get to bed before 11. I don't know. I get, I get in here and watch the news. And I like to watch 44 station, and because they tell you everything that's going on and what's wrong with it. And but when I get up earlier, like I have something to do. Well, the main thing is I do my breakfast, and then I read the paper and work the crypto quote, and and then I work on cards or play games or just whatever I need to do. Keep my kitchen clean and do my laundry and just take care of things.
The one.
Well, I don't do the sweeping, but I have my niece. We have a little arrangement with her, and she comes over and so often and runs a sweeper and dusting and doing other things that I can't do.
Now, we didn't ask, but one thing that we asked some folks is how important was church or religion growing up and into today?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Methodist church, and back then they didn't seem like push what like the Baptist, well, I went to the Baptist and Methodist, you know, really all my life, just first one then the other.
But today, you told us that earlier, but today, do you still go to church every Sunday?
Well,
or-
no, because getting me out of the house, I have to use a little hand walker to get down my steps, you know, to get out in the garage. And then I go through there and they take, I have a little transport chair that just folds up, that they can fold up and put in the car. And so I go in that, but didn't go to their church, so I just can't ask somebody to do all that for me you know, every Sunday. And besides, I just can't get up that early and get around and do it, you know.
Well, yeah, we would be happy to take her, but it's just, it's become to really,
Well, because
it's just hard on her to do
you
that
know,
every week.
Yeah,
and
every
so-
week it is. Because I always dread when I have to get up and go early.
And then to sit there that long too, in an uncomfortable
Sure.
place.
Yeah, but I still read my Bible and I still keep up with my church. I still contribute to it, and I also get the bulletin they send it from the church with the sick list and what's going on, and so I keep up with everybody. And that's why I've got so many birthdays coming up in September, about 14 of them. And a lot of them, you know, they put out the list who has a birthday too from our church.
Mhm.
And so a lot of these people I have sent cards to before, you know, most of them I have.
Do you do them from memory, or do you?
I have to have a picture to look at, yeah.
Rooster's good.
I usually send that to some a guy that's raised on the farm. And then I've got one with a barn on there that I'll send them to them. So
So do you have a motto in life that you live by?
well, I don't know, except that my mother was very creative, and you know, I always looked up to her for things she could do. And because she didn't have any formal education, but she wrote a beautiful hand, and I have a lot of her. She started our genealogy, and she was a Graham, and she started the Graham genealogy and doing it all by hand, writing. She did, you know, and she had beautiful handwriting, and she would never misspell a word because she kept the dictionary, you know, there, and she needed to spell a word. And I find that's pretty helpful for me. So I can't always spell everything too.
Well, did you ever expect to live to 100?
No, I didn't. I never. Well, I really never thought about it. I thought, well, I guess I'll just live as long as the Lord can use me, you know. So I'm most happy when I'm doing something for somebody else. I really am.
That's the motto, right there. That's it. That's
If it's not one thing, it's another, isn't it?
Mhm.
If I don't do one thing, I'll say, here, take my credit card and go get you some gas,
Mhm.
or whatever. And then, when I had a doctor that did some surgery on my throat, I was having some problems. And he said, now you're going to have to take calcium. And I said, oh, those old pills are too big. You know, a calcium tablet, if you've ever seen one, is about that long. I couldn't swallow it. And I said, could milk do it? He said, well, yeah. And I said, chocolate milk? He said, well, he laughed and he said, well, I have no restriction on what you can eat or drink. So I eat and drink what I want to, except I don't drink anything but chocolate milk.
Well, that kind of leads. Well, what do you think your secret is to a long life? Why have you lived so long? What's your secret?
Well, sometimes I wonder. I don't know. I guess it's my positive attitude, and I have such a sense of humor. I can find, you know, a lot of things. You get us together, a lot of us, and it's just laughter, you know. So, And, you know, the Bible tells you, a merry heart doeth good, but a bad spirit draweth up the bones. That's in Psalms.
She's a great example of what
Yes,
a
she
Christian life is supposed to be about.
Well, I used
She
to
lives
teach.
the Word of God is what she does.
Yeah,
And that's,
I used to teach Sunday school all the time, usually kids, you know, in junior high and all. That got to be a pretty chore, you know, and I don't know how it is now, but usually that's a hard class to reach, you know, in the junior high. They think they know it all.
It's true.
You got
She's
some-
always looking
You got
forward
something like that?
for people and looking for opportunity to do whatever.
and I've never seen her just indwelling on herself.
No.
She doesn't do that. You ask about being depressed. She's not depressed because she never focuses on her.
Well, if history were written today, what would you want it to say about you?
Oh, well, I don't know, just that, like I feel, like I said, I like to do things for people, and I like for things to people to be good, you know, that they wouldn't have all this terrible things that's going on. If I could rewrite history, you know, if everybody could get along and things like that. And that's something like in our family we never have any problem because we all love each other and we put them first rather than what we feel. And I just hardly ever feel down because I can always pick up a puzzle and get on it, and that takes my mind off of things, you know. So.
Well, do you have anything left on your bucket list you want to do?
It's not jump out of an airplane, I'll tell you for sure.
That's on mine, so let's go.
Oh, you? No, I don't think I want to do
I'm going to
that,
stay
but-
back with her because I don't want to jump out there.
No, I don't want to do that for sure, because I think heights. I have been in one of those big tall restaurants, you know, up and we went over in Canada. That was something else I missed. We went to Niagara Falls and we rode the Maid of the Mist in those boats out there. Did you ever do that?
No, that's on my bucket list though.
Well, and I was surprised at my husband that he went. They put these old coats on us, like they were made out of rubber or something, you know, because you get wet, and caps on. But it was fun, and it, you know, get up under there and you could see all that. And, yeah, but I can imagine somebody going over that in a barrel, and I think they have. Some people have survived. And a lot of them haven't, you know. But it's amazing. And we went to that restaurant over in Canada, and that way, when you're up there, you can really see it. And they said an Indian discovered that, and we wondered what he thought, you know, when he discovered it. Did he go over it, or what did he do?
Well, do you have any memories from the influenza, back in 1919, right in there? Did that impact your family any?
No, I don't remember it affecting us, you know, in any way.
And then you said the depression was tough, but you lived through it.
Yeah, it was, we didn't really know that, because we always had plenty to eat and to wear, and, you know, it wasn't a lot, and we had to work hard for it, but a lot of my friends, they had farms. They owned the farms, you know, which made them have more than we did, but I never did feel like I was, you know, didn't have that, because my parents always took good care of us.
And then you were out of Texas by the time the Dust Bowl was occurring, I guess?
Yeah, we didn't get any of that. That was mostly Oklahoma when the Grapes of Wrath were written, you know. Yeah.
Was music ever a part of your life?
Well, I always wanted to play the piano. I guess if I had a bucket list, that would be it. But when she took music, I did take some. But it was hard then. But I found I could play one song that was Juanita. I kind of gave up on it, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
It was just a little too much.
I've still got the piano.
Yeah, she still has a piano. I don't know whether she can play it or not now, but
Yeah, I could play it some.
you
I
can.
took piano for about 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what would you and your husband do for fun, leisure?
We did a lot of traveling, of course, then, but we like to go to OU football games. We did. That was one of the highlights. We loved to do that. And
Hello.
Play card games? Did you play cards?
no, I don't think we ever did.
Well, I need to call you back.
He was a deacon in the church, and he, had a lot of responsibility with that. And but he liked to be out working in the yard, and when we had that big yard, she said she remembered when I'd have supper ready and I couldn't get him in to come in to eat.
He liked to hunt and fish.
Oh yeah, he and his brother, and by the way, I didn't tell you this, but we married brothers, my sister and I. I married the older one, she married the youngest. And when she was just out of high school when she married him, but after we married, and they would be, at our home at the same time, and they'd get in the kitchen like cooking stuff, and my husband said, well, you just wait, he'll be wanting to date her. Next thing you do, they'll be married. And I said, oh, you're crazy. And sure enough, that's what happened. And they married during the war, and he was stationed in Mississippi, and so I had to go with her on the bus. We rode the bus down there for her to get married. And at the time they had a restriction on the servicemen using taxis because of the prostitution that was going on, So we had to walk, and I wore a blister on my heel, and I don't know why they never thought that we could ride in a taxi. He couldn't, but we could. But anyway, we never thought of that, I guess, because. But anyway, that was. I always remember that because that's painful,
So you had a pretty good relationship with the in-laws then.
Yes, oh, we sure did. Yeah, because we didn't have to break anybody else in. No. We'd already broken them all, so by him being the youngest and mine being the oldest, so.
Tell a little bit about our summer vacations with them.
Oh yeah, we used to go to Colorado a lot. They loved Colorado. The boys were going fishing and trout fishing and whatever. And I guess that was one of our main things, was going like fishing. And then we'd go. And I remember one trip we made up there, and we decided we'd go up this little hill, to see what was up there. And there was just the women. And we kept going to get a little higher and higher, and finally we met a car coming down, and there was hardly any room. It just happened that there was enough room, and, you look down over here and there was nothing that you could pull over and let this car by. And then so we said, what's up there? And he said, nothing. Nothing was up there. It was somebody's lived up there, but they had a gate, and you just enough to turn around and come back down. So that cured us of experimenting, exploring. Because you get lost in those mountains, and that's bad.
So,
He used to have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, we did, and I know one time there was a couple there, and their little had a baby, or a little girl, and she had a seizure or something, and so my sister knew where the hospital was at a little town from where we'd stayed around Wolf Creek Pass, and so we went in the car with them to show them, and that man drove about 100 miles an hour. You talk about, of course, it happened to be that it was straight, it wasn't on the mountains, but that like scared us to death because we just knew he was going to have a wreck. But anyway, they got there in time to do something for the baby, and they had to come pick us up. But
Yeah, I did.
you did.
Yeah, I was barely driving at the time, me and my cousin, which my aunt and uncle, her sister and her husband only had one child, me. I mean, they had me and they had one.
And so
Jamie,
they're like sisters
We're like
because they're
sisters.
double
But anyway,
cousins.
mhm.
They called from the hospital and said, "Come pick us up," and I said, "What?" Because my dad and my uncle were out fishing, so.
Good times. Anything else you want to add before we close off?
No, except I've just had a wonderful life. I've been blessed, even with the bad things. You know, you look back and you go on. Because there's nothing you can do about it. So you just have to have a good attitude. Just one day at a time.
And take advantage of new gadgets.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I love all of it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. We appreciate it.